Here's an interesting thought that I noticed, and it was on another video that I made, and I started going through the thought exercise. One thing that men have definitely lost is sacred spaces, for sure. And it used to be that those sacred spaces might be back in the day, like where guys would just be with other guys and speak like men and act like men. And there's been a definite loss of that. You have the integration of women into the military. So now, kind of an all male has become integrated. And then, so that sacred space is gone, except for maybe like the utmost elite units where it's just dudes, you know? So that's been lost. And then you had kind of women coming into the men's clubs. So that sacred space was gone, where men would just be men. Then you watch some of these old movies, and you know that it was like this all the time. Men used to have studies in their house, and they'd retreat to the study afterwards to read or whatever they're going to do, and men would retreat, and after, let's say it was a dinner, men would go one way after the meal was complete, and women would go another way. And it's a sacred space on the same front for women that was lost too. The women would go off to their sacred space and talk about exactly what women talk about, which is not for men to know. And guys would go off and have their sacred space and talk about what men talk about. Same thing in the other professions, either farming, whatever, just be pretty much men out in the fields, sons, etc. So that got me thinking about all the losses of sacred spaces. And this goes for the family as well. So within a marriage, you want to keep your marriage in its own sacred space as well with your wife. That's also its own, bubble of a sacred space. And it's so sacred that you don't want to take what's inside the marriage outside of the marriage, right? So airing your grievances with your wife uncharitably to your male friends, that's a piss poor thing to do. And the same applies to women when they hang out with other women. The quickest way to understand truly somebody's character is how they talk about the one that they're in the sacred space with, their wives, right? They're gonna talk about their wives. And the same thing goes for men. When men hang out with men, um, those spaces are meant to be sacred. Like the conversations, the things, they're all sacred spaces. So you don't come home and gossip to your wife about what's going on with Tom. You know what I mean? You can't betray that trust. And also it deteriorates that whole sacred space. There should be walls and barriers against all those spaces. Like think about it like bubbles. You got a bubble around your marriage, you got a bubble in your family. The bubble around the marriage has definitely changed as well because you have the circumstance at this point where you know different people are coming into your house that don't belong there, and the phone makes that too. The phone and the texting and the video watching, the social media, basically invade that sacred space. So I'll tell you guys this is start to think about all those spaces as sacred, even for your wives. Right? You want your wives to be able to freely spend time with other women in the sacred space. And they do that, right? When they get together with other moms and the kids are doing kid stuff and the moms are talking about whatever mom stuff, women stuff that they talk about. Because you're not, at the end of the day, you're not at the same wavelength as your wife. And your wife is not at the same wavelength as you. Like your interests are different. How you go through a problem is different, and the advice that men give other men is very different. The advice that women give women is very different. The advice that you would give your wife, somebody sacred to you, somebody you are vowed to, somebody you love, somebody you're um, protecting and in charge of and over, you're going to give very different advice to her, right? And the same thing goes if it's family business, right? And the sacred space goes for families as too. I think a very it's very degenerate behavior to air out your dirty laundry to other people of your family. There's one thing of having a discussion about it, and there's another thing about being uncharitable and improper with what you have to say and degrading your lineage, your family, your father, your mother, your brothers and sisters. Um, you don't have to not tell the truth. That's certainly certain, but you can definitely speak charitably about those folks, and that also is a testament to your character. So what I suggest, guys, is start bringing back more sacred spaces, because to hear about men and women's loneliness, I don't understand how you could be alone. I don't. I start cultivating real friendships and real relationships outside this thing, outside this device that you're watching this on now. Um, Real interactions, and I mean, for men, like I just had a fire with a buddy the other night, and just caught up on, what's going on, and that's it. That's it. 90 minutes. 90 minutes, just dudes. Of course, the wife asked, "What'd you guys talk about?" It was nothing, just family, kid stuff. That's it. That's it, man. That's it. You don't need to go into details. And you definitely want to never air out somebody else's dirty laundry. And if you ever hear somebody else air out somebody else's private business, just check them. Just check them. Do I really need to hear this? Should I know this? No? Okay. Then don't tell me. I mean, I've said that to my wife numerous times with certain situations that I know I should not know this information and I should not hear it. So just cut it off. You have to start taking responsibility for that stuff too. You can't say, well, she told me. You could have told her no. Or, oh, I felt like I had to tell her. Like, why? Why would you betray the sacred space of the dudes, bring it into a different sacred space? Like, you're mixing stuff. That's not good. It's gross. So cultivate those sacred spaces and think about them all separate. Help your wife have sacred spaces if she doesn't. Okay, with other women that you know. Same thing. Your wife wants you to have a sacred space. Trust me. What she doesn't want is you to spend time with degenerates. In the same way, it works both ways. You don't want her to spend time with degenerate bad influences, and she doesn't want you to do that either. So start really holding each other accountable in your little sacred space, and hold other guys in that masculine sacred space accountable. And if you hear them, you can judge their character accordingly. If they start airing dirty laundry about their families or their wives or whatever it might be, and just like give them a check. Let's say there was somebody that aired some dirty laundry to me somewhat recently, and every time that person airs dirty laundry about basically their family to me, it just it takes them down a notch. And then you become more cautious what you share and what you don't share with that person, because your trust level is shot, right? If you know they're sharing this stuff about somebody else, you know that if you have anything to say to them, they're going to do the same thing, and that's it's derelict. So recultivate sacred spaces. Even if you're in mixed company, you could always choose to, you know, have your wife on one, you're going to sit down for dinner or something, like have those sacred spaces where, you're sitting next to another guy and you can have conversation, and you're seating your wife appropriately next to his wife or whatever it might be, so the women can go do stuff, and then retreat. Always allow breathing room for those sacred spaces, and the same thing goes at home within your marriage. Is allow a sacred space in your marriage that nothing leaves those walls. Masculine relationships, nothing leaves those walls. The same thing with the female relationships. Check your buddies, check your friends, check your wife if necessary. Maybe they check you. Don't air out your dirty laundry. And that's it, guys. Out.